Hi everyone, welcome or welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be going through all the books that I read in quarter one. I'm like kind of behind on my reading this year. I feel like since I got a gaming PC, I feel like most of my time has been spent doing other hobbies, like using my gaming PC. So I don't feel too bad about it, but I mean, I am 7 books behind on my Goodreads reading challenge, which isn't great, but you know, we can move on. I can make it up with reading manga. So I read 10 books and my most read genre was horror, which is no surprise knowing me. I say sitting here in my Resident Evil t-shirt. Anyway, let's get into the books I've read. So the first book I read was The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson, which I finally got to. This has been on my TBR for so long. If you know anything about fantasy, Brandon Sanderson's name comes up a lot. So I figured I need to read this one. It's a kind of high fantasy set in this world where like the Dark Lord has won, so it's set in this kind of like very heavily this very like heavily oppressive world where, you know, the dark ruler has won and there's kind of a rebellion brewing. We follow our main character Vin as she kind of gets involved in this. I really like the magic system in this. It's very unique where it uses like the metals to kind of push and pull objects, and different metals will do other things as well. Like there's different uses for different types of metal, and sometimes they'll even work like in oppose like together or against each other. So like one of them will push and one will pull, and they're kind of like similar. I also really enjoyed all of the other characters and the world building and the kind of like political intrigue that we get of like this kind of rebellion and things that are happening, all these like political things that you can kind of see coming, and I think will carry on in the rest of the series. So there's like a little bit of a budding romance in here, which I thought was quite cute to kind of add some little bit to the story, but it's not like the main center point of the story at all. So I really enjoyed this and gave it 5 stars. Next up, I read the first 2 volumes of Tokyo Ghoul, which is a manga set in this kind of world where ghouls are kind of like vampires, but they need to survive by eating like human flesh. So they kind of like move around the world the way a vampire does, where they kind of can blend in. People know that they kind of exist, but they don't know who is a ghoul and who isn't. And there's certain like there's certain parts of society that are kind of like ghoul kind of headquarters, even though people don't always know it. So we follow Kaneki, who is a kind of college student. He gets involved in an accident and gets a transplant, which leads to him becoming half ghoul. So he kind of is like in this in-between world where he's kind of learning about like good and bad, and it kind of challenges his view on what is good and what is bad, and how things aren't always as like black and white and clean cut as he seems to think it is, and that a lot of the humans seem to think. There's lots of blurred lines, and it like kind of examines his worldview and how it's more complicated than he seems to think it is, and like how it changes his opinion on other people as well. There's also like obviously a more overarching story that is kind of like unraveling about different kind of groups of people that are set out to kind of like kill the ghouls and the kind of ghoul resistance in comparison. And that's like the like more overarching story, which I'm still just getting into. So I'm excited to read more of this, and I think reading more of this can probably help me get my Goodreads reading goal back on track. And then next up, I read Witchcraft for Wayward Girls by Grady Hendrix. Grady Hendrix is one of my favorite horror authors. I love his books, and this one I really enjoyed, even though it was slightly different from what I was expecting. This essentially follows a group of girls who go to this wayward home where teenage or young girls who are unmarried in the like 70s. It's based on a real thing where they would go to these wayward homes where they are kept there to have their kind of hide their pregnancy and have their baby, and then the baby gets taken away from them and given to another family, and they kind of go back to their life because of their like they're like seen as not eligible people to be having children. So their children get taken away from them whether they want it or not. And we follow this group of girls who go to this home and get involved with some witchcraft while they're there, which kind of unravels in different ways. I wasn't expecting like the witchcraft seems a bit, like felt more feral and like unhinged than I thought it was going to be, which wasn't what I was expecting, but I was interested. I think overall the story was like a little bit slow to get into, and definitely read a little bit more like a historical fiction with horror elements in, compared especially to some of Grady Hendrix's other works, which felt like they had a bit more horror. Like there was a lot of horror of real life in this, especially in terms of like pregnancy and childbirth and traumatic things like that I felt like were really traumatizing to read, which I'm sure like the experience isn't that far from the truth in terms of things that do happen. So it was slightly different from what I was expecting, but nonetheless I really still enjoyed it. Go into it expecting it to be a bit more of like feel a little bit more historical fiction with those like magical and his horror elements added in. Then next up I read Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro, which I also loved. It's a literary fiction kind of set in this dystopian world where we follow a main character, Kathy, who is like reflecting back on her life and her childhood growing up and at this school, Hailsham, where she has these two other friends, Ruth and Tommy, and they kind of are slowly kind of uncovering the way that the world works and what their purpose in this world is. So we kind of see like little moments of their lives that have shaped them and this slow unraveling of them discovering what they're here for, what's going on in the world, and the way that different people are seen in society. It was really interesting. It's very slow to get going, and it's very like, it feels very like a little bit mundane at times, but in like still an intriguing way. I really liked it. So the only thing I didn't like about this, which, well, it felt like the kind of like, you kind of get this slow unraveling of everything that's going on, but then at one point there's kind of like an info dump of like explaining things, which I thought like didn't really work with how the story was going, but other than that, I really enjoyed this. Then next up, I read Get a Life, Chloe Brown, which was for my reading romance kind of vlog that I did. This one I gave like 3 out of 5 stars because I don't think it was really for me, but I can see why some people like it. It follows Chloe Brown as she kind of tries to make her life more exciting after she has like a near-death experience. So she asks for help from a guy that she knows called Red, who he like rides a motorbike and does all these things that she thinks are really exciting, and she's like, he can help me do this. So she makes a list and he helps her with it, and they kind of obviously kind of start getting involved with each other. I found it a bit too lusty and too like forward for my liking. It was a little bit cringy, some of the romance and like the more lusty scenes in it, but I can see why people like it. There was good representation of like different types of bodies and disability, and I enjoyed some of it, but it just wasn't for me. It's quite rare for me to enjoy a third act conflict in a book, but in this one I actually really liked it because we got to see the characters kind of like reflect on their own flaws and their own triggers and kind of like work through it, kind of like get through to the other person and kind of work on it a bit to make the relationship work, which I really liked. It was kind of like miscommunication, but it also felt like they reflected a little bit more on why they behaved a certain way. And next up I read Part of Your World, which is a romance, and it follows Alexis and Daniel, and they're from 2 different kind of worlds. Alexis is like this high-flying doctor, and Daniel is like this small town kind of like B&B owner, very involved in the community, and they kind of like strike up this romance. I love the writing of this. Like I loved the writing style and the way that the characters were kind of like fleshed out and had their own lives. But like, I feel like the storyline just didn't work for me, and the way that the characters acted and the way that they miscommunicated things and they left things out. They didn't talk to each other properly. It just felt so stressful, and the characters were meant to be like in their like 30s, and I was just like, you can't be like this. Like, I don't get it. How is the character that's older and meant to be more mature like acting like this? And then the character that's younger, like there was like an age gap between them, and he seemed a little bit more mature in the way that he dealt with things, even though he also got on my nerves a bit sometimes. But yeah, there was also like, I felt like the character, like there was things the characters were like, the main character was learning about like toxic relationships in the past, and she was dealing with it all, but then she didn't apply it to like the toxicity within her own family, and I got frustrated at certain parts where it didn't feel like she had learnt she wasn't really learning these lessons properly, and I was just like, so what's the point? It was okay. Like, I'd read another book from this author just hoping that maybe the characters are just a bit different, the conflicts are a bit different, and there's not as much miscommunication. But this one I didn't really enjoy that much. I think I gave it 3 stars, but I think it's more like a 2.5 just because of that I got so infuriated with it, and I didn't understand why these things weren't getting resolved in the way they should be getting resolved. And like, why the characters just didn't communicate. Like, they just didn't communicate properly. And like, in my reading romance books video that I did a whole section with spoilers. So if you want to see my spoiler-filled thoughts, go and check that out, because I went on like a whole rant. And then another romance I read was Two Wrongs Make a Right by Chloe Leese, which I, again, enjoyed the writing. I enjoyed the way the characters were kind of fleshed out. But the romance in this I just didn't like. Like, I didn't like the way that the romance felt too intense, too fast. Like, So the story follows our two characters, B and Jamie, and their friends kind of set them up where neither of them know who the other is, and then they kind of find out and they're like, oh, it's you. Like, because they don't really like each other. They've kind of got off on the wrong foot before, and they were like, okay, let's kind of like fake date and then have this big breakup so that our friends get the message and stop meddling in our lives and trying to set us up with people. So they're like, okay, yeah. And I like those parts where they're kind of like, you know, they're kind of like bantering with each other. I like their chemistry at the start, and I like how the characters are a little bit quirky. They're kind of different. They have different representations of like neurodiversity and like social anxiety. I like those, but the romance, just when they got together, it was just like too much, like too fast. Like it was a bit unhinged. The timeline just felt off about what they were doing, what they were saying, how they were acting around each other. And I get that it's like a romance, but it was just too much for me. I just could, like, I just didn't, I couldn't, it just made me not want to read it. I didn't really like it that much. But then again, but I am like, I liked the writing style. I like the author's writing and kind of the characterization. So I'm like, maybe if I read another one, if the story is not like, if the romance isn't as like unhinged, maybe I'd like it. But yeah, like some things were just unhinged. Like getting a tattoo of some for like that matches someone else's that you've known for a couple of months is unhinged behavior. I'm sorry. And then finally, I read Emily Wilde's Map of the Otherlands by Heather Fawcett, which I loved. I loved the kind of like how this is like a cozy fantasy with like a little bit of romance, but I just loved their characters and it's not too heavy on the romance. Like the romance is very, very closed doors. They don't even kiss, but he's clearly in love with her and they kind of have this little banter back and forth. He's like the sunshine, she's the grumpy, and then they're on this like different adventures. And I love how just like cozy it is, but also there's like different like adventures they're going on and you don't know what's going to happen, and they're kind of like a little bit random in a way. Like I don't really see the storylines of these coming, and they're not like super fast paced, they're quite slow, but I just love it. I don't know. I can't explain why, but I just love Emily and Wendell together. They're just so cute and they bounce off each other and I love it. And I can't wait for the third one, even if there's no plot and it is just Emily and Wendell vibes. I love it. And that is everything that I read in quarter 1, so from January to March. Let me know if you've read any of these. I'm hoping I can claw back some more in quarter 2 and kind of get some more books read, although I am in the middle of a chunky fantasy, which is taking up all my reading time. So we'll see if I do manage to catch up on those 7 books. But anyway, let me know if you've read any of these, and if you like this video, please give it a like. And if you want to see more from me, you can hit the subscribe button. Thank you so much for watching, and let me know what you've been reading, what your favourite book from quarter 1 was, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye!